Russia outlaws Amnesty International in latest crackdown on dissent and activists. Now, let me tell you why that's not much of a problem, because Amnesty International don't actually do much. The Russian authorities on Monday outlawed Amnesty International as an undesirable organisation, a label that under a 2015 law makes involvement with such organisations a criminal offence. The decision by the Russian Prosecutor General's office, announced in an online statement, it is the latest in the unrelenting crackdown on Kremlin critics, journalists and activists that intensified to unprecedented levels after Moscow invaded Ukraine in February of 2022. The designation means that the International Human Rights Group must stop any work in Russia, and it subjects those who cooperate with it or support it to prosecution, including if anyone shares Amnesty International's reports on social media. Amnesty International did not immediately comment on the move. Russia's list of undesirable organisations currently covers 223 entities, including prominent independent news outlets and rights groups. Among those are prominent news organisations like Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, or Russian independent outlet Meduza, think tanks like Chatham House, anti-corruption group Transparency International, and Open Russia, an opposition group founded by Mikhail Khodorkovsky, an exiled tycoon who became an opposition figure. After Open Russia was declared undesirable in 2021 and disbanded to protect its members, its leader, Andrei Pavorov, was arrested and convicted on charges of carrying out activities of an undesirable organisation. He was sentenced to 4 years in prison and released in 2024 in the largest prisoner exchange with the West since Soviet times. Why did the West want this guy? Why are all these groups doing a lot of stuff to meddle with Russia? I've got a little bit of a nuanced take here. Right? But we'll go on with the article, right? Free press equals strong democracy. I disagree. Right? We should have a free press. It's just unfortunately they all sing from the same hymn sheet. But we'll save it for the end. Amnesty International was launched in 1961. The group documents and reports human rights violations around the globe and campaigns for the release of those it deems unjustly imprisoned. It has released reports on Russia's war in Ukraine, accusing Moscow of crimes against humanity, and has spoken out against the Kremlin's crackdown on dissent that has swept up thousands of people in recent years. Amnesty International's recent statements on Russia included decrying a prison sentence handed to prominent election monitoring activist Grigory Melkonyans as a brazen and politically motivated clampdown on peaceful activism. It also spoke out against a series of arrests of publishing professionals in Russia last week over alleged LGBTQ propaganda in books. This shameless, heavy-handed use of state apparatus against literature is as absurd as it is terrifying, said Natalia Zviagina, I don't know, Amnesty International's Russia director. In its statement, the Prosecutor General's office accused the group of running Russophobic projects and activities aimed at Russia's political and economic isolation. And here we are at the end of the article. Now, here's my nuanced take. Right. These groups, as you have all probably noticed, yes, they do defend people and journalists and stuff like that have been sent to prison. Yes, I do believe human rights should be protected, and yes, Russia are being way over the top and way very, very heavy-handed when it comes to imprisoning and arresting these people. That I will not defend. Right, basically free speech is for everyone, even for people that I don't like. And I think governments arresting people for speaking out against it is that government admitting that they are weak. Oh, these little activists could basically cause our entire collapse. We are afraid of them, therefore we're going to put them in prison. I see it as death throes. Right, I see that. Basically, see if I see a government starting to arrest people for speaking out against it, that's when I would move in. Why are you panicking so much, big guy? Never ever limp in front of the lions, you know? You never ever limp in front of them. Right, but basically that's why I don't like it. However, these groups, while they do a lot of good work in getting journalists and activists and everybody out of jail, which they absolutely should, these groups are politically co-opted and they are controlled by the West. They are controlled by the Five Eyes, the CIA, three-letter agencies, whatever you want to call them. And it's because they don't really go after people in the West. They go after people in countries that the West don't like very much, especially the American government. They're always talking about Iran. They're always talking, and those places, Iran and North Korea, and all these other places which do absolutely have a bunch of human rights abuses. However, they are dead fucking silent when the same thing's happening in the West. It's unless it happens to leftist activists. These are leftist organizations. They will not defend the rights. They will not defend the rights of right wingers. They don't. And one of the main reasons for that is when I was arrested over Nazi Pug, we approached Amnesty International to see if they would defend my human rights, and they told me to fuck off. They told me to go away. So basically, yeah, they do defend human rights if you have the correct political ideology, right? They only defend their own. And they also frustrate foreign countries that are adversaries of America. So while, yeah, they shouldn't be banning these groups, they shouldn't be jailing journalists, they shouldn't be jailing activists, etc., they definitely should not be doing that. These agencies are controlled by foreign adversaries, and they're there to frustrate the Russian government. So while I understand why the Russian government did it, it's a bitch move. It is a complete bitch move. Basically, oh, this is just Western interference, that's all it is. You're basically going after this and that. And whereas, all the arrests is Russia being authoritarian, which they absolutely should not be being because it is a weakness. I just view it as complete weakness at this point. These places pick and choose who they support. They'll either basically cause frustration if it helps America and UK governments, etc., if it's against a political adversary. But the stuff that happens back home, like people jailed over Facebook posts or people having their door kicked down because they retweeted the wrong thing and everything. Amnesty International is dead silent. They don't do it in the Western countries unless leftists are the target, which is why I don't really give a fuck about the groups. You either defend human rights for everyone or just don't do it at all. You don't just get to pick and choose. That's why I speak out for everyone. I speak out. Why don't you ever talk about leftists that get this? But I do quite a lot. You just don't pay attention. I love it when people who don't watch my content at all bitch to me about stuff that I don't cover when I've covered it numerous times. You just didn't watch my videos, did you? But still, a little bit of a nuanced take that's going to cause an argument in the comments. Enjoy that one.